This is Tres Hombres restaurant in Petaluma's Theater Square, where a man posing as a fire inspector tried to commit a burglary on November 28th. But thanks to alert employees, including manager Stephanie Matthews, the crime was thwarted and the man and his accomplice were apprehended. Police said that 45-year-old Frank Sullivan of Boys Hot Springs walked into the employee area of Tres Hombres restaurant and said he was conducting a fire inspection. He was wearing a CAL FIRE baseball cap and had a clipboard and a Palm Pilot on it as though he were taking notes. But employees became suspicious when Sullivan wasn't able to produce identification proving that he was a fire inspector. He left the restaurant with an employee's purse. Restaurant manager Stephanie Matthews picks up the rest of the story.
We had a gentleman come into the restaurant and walk to the back of the restaurant. He was carrying a clipboard and he had a black jacket over his arm and like a Palm Pilot in front of the clipboard. And my server, Kat O'Neill, actually initially recognized him. She said to him that she needed to see some identification because he said he was a fire inspector checking the sprinkler system. Said that he had left his identification in his truck. So she said, okay, that's fine. I'll follow you to your truck and check your business card. And I saw her walk out the building. And I initially thought, if my server's walking out of the building, there's a problem. I thought it was a potential like dine and dash where someone would eat in the restaurant and not pay, and perhaps she was following him for payment. That was the first thing I thought of. So I followed her outside thinking she might need my assistance. And he quickly realized that there were two of us following him and became very agitated by that. He then asked, he looked back behind his shoulder and he goes, "You're coming here too?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to go where my server's going to go." And then he realized we weren't going to leave him and started running. And as he started running, he dropped her purse underneath his jacket. And it was a black purse. It fell right to the ground. And she picked it up and started screaming at him. And then he continued to run. He was almost stunned for a moment. And then he just continued to run, thinking he wasn't going to get away with it. And so she picked the purse up and went to walk back to the restaurant. And once I processed what had happened, I became really angry. And I wanted to make sure that he didn't get away with it. So I just didn't think. I just started running after him because I felt that it was really important to get him. So I felt it was really important that he become arrested for stealing a purse. I ran through a parking lot by Pete's Coffee, and I pushed him as he was transitioning between the sidewalk and the street. And that push kind of enabled him to trip over his feet and fall. I told him that I was a marathon runner and he couldn't outrun me. And he was pretty winded. He was pretty out of breath. So I knew that he couldn't continue to run. I knew I kind of had captured him. Luckily, I had my cell phone in the back of my pocket and called 911. The suspect actually pleaded with me not to hurt him. The more aggressive I became and yelled at him, the more he kind of became just very introverted and withdrawn, and was pleading with me not to hurt him and not to call the cops. And he said several times over and over he just really needed the money. And I did feel really sorry for him. I did feel empathy. But I was pretty angry still and didn't want him to get away with it. So I was giving the 911 operator the details on the phone. And as I'm doing that, a car pulls up. And he opens the door to the SUV and he says to the girl driving, to the woman driving, "What took you so long?" And he gets into the car. I still haven't processed it this time. I think he's actually carjacking her. So I grab his arm and I start pulling him out of the vehicle, thinking I'm helping her. She looks back at me, and that's when I really got a good look at her. And she tells him to get in, and I recognize at that moment that she's part of it, that they're together. So she speeds off. I have to let go because she accelerates to the vehicle. She speeds off and goes through the stoplight intersection. And it's actually a red light that she runs. And all I could think of was, I've come this far. He was so close. Where are the cops, waiting for them to arrive? And I knew that I had to follow the vehicles. So I ran through the red intersection and was able to capture the license plate. And I continued to run to make sure I had it. I then recalled back 911 and told the operator the make and model of the vehicle and the license plate number. And as I was doing that, the vehicle made a right onto Kentucky Street.
The suspects were identified as 45-year-old Frank Morano Sullivan of Boys Hot Springs and Carrie Leanertz, 43, of Santa Rosa. They were arrested a few blocks away. They are suspected of committing several other burglaries in Sonoma and Marin counties. They were booked into Sonoma County Jail, and their bail was set at $10,000 each.
That's the question I probably hear most from people since it's happened. I would like to think that I wouldn't, because when I looked at it in retrospect, I realized what a dangerous situation I put myself in. I at no point in that moment when I was doing it was in fear of my life or my safety. However, I have 2 children, and my first responsibility is to them. And looking back on it, I just think that I probably wouldn't have taken that risk as a mom. I shouldn't have taken the risk as a mom. And I just it was the moment, there was something went wrong, and I felt that there needed to be justice, and all I could think of was making sure that there was justice. The mom in me probably should have been a little more cautious.